Hey Booktube, Bill Ruttenberg here at the Ruttenberg Library. Come to you again this morning with another book tag. As I shared in my previous video, life's getting hectic, so I am trying to catch up on these book tags and go ahead and get them, published on the videos, just in case I can't get another video out for a couple days. So thank you for joining me here. And this book tag is the Nonfiction on Booktube tag. And I actually saw this over on Keely's channel, and I'll put the link in the description down below. And I found the original tag at Abookolive channel, and I'll put that link down below along with the questions. Feel free, anybody that has not done this, please feel free to consider yourself tagged and go ahead and do it. This is great. We find that on Booktube there's a lot of fiction, but the up and coming subgenre here is nonfiction on Booktube, and I've been fortunate enough to join this wave of readers that have joined the Booktube community, and it's been a lot of fun. So when I saw this tag, I thought, what a great tag. So I wanted to join that. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started on these questions. So question number one on the nonfiction on Booktube tag was, how much nonfiction do you read? And I actually did the math because I keep a running list of all of the books. I have like a Google Doc that I keep a running list of all the books that I've read, and I went through there. I started that Google Doc in June of 2017. I'd had other papers somewhere, and I must have lost them or something, where I had all my books that I've read over the last several years, and I don't know where it's at. It's almost like a diary that I've lost. But anyway, on this Google Doc that I have, from the summer of 2017 to the present, I have read 102 nonfiction to 35 fiction. So that's about a 3 out of every 4 books that I read are nonfiction books. So 75% or so are nonfiction. I probably should have done the exact percentage, but it's round about there. I read a lot of nonfiction. That's primarily what I read. I enjoy it, and I don't want to go in too much to that because that carries into some of these other questions. So let's go ahead and go to question number 2. What kind of nonfiction videos do you make or do you want to make on Booktube? I honestly like making the typical videos that everybody has been making and watching. I love these book tags. Have been a lot of fun. You get to know people and get to know their interests and their opinions and stuff like that. I have thoroughly enjoyed doing book hauls, Friday reads, the bookshelf tours, which, by the way, I am going to pick up on those again. I've done all the downstairs shelves, but I'm going to head upstairs. I am waiting though. My wife's going to take her and the girls to Colorado. I mean, barring any travel restrictions. They're going to go to Colorado for my sister-in-law's baby shower. And I'm stuck here teaching and just kind of hanging out, waiting on them to get back. So during that time, while I've got a lot of time on my hands, I am going to be doing some bookshelf tours upstairs in the upper room. Clean it out a little bit so I can get to the shelves, but that ought to be, I hope, for me anyway, a lot of fun. I hope you'll enjoy those as well. But those are the kind of the videos that I've liked doing. I mentioned in an earlier video, I've been curious about maybe doing something for teachers, like different lessons on, like we do various things with reading with the kids and helping them to understand documents and stuff. And I've been interested to know if any teachers out there would be interested in me doing those videos. So that's something I had considered. That's not set in stone by any means, but I wanted to make sure I had some support on that. So question number 3, what's your favorite subgenre of nonfiction? My favorite is U.S. history. I love U.S. history. I love pretty much every aspect of it. If I had to narrow it down, I love the antebellum period of the 1850s, right before the Civil War. I think there was so much just very interesting stuff that happened in that time period. The country was was changing, well, really changing physically, because the country was growing right at the end of the 1840s, and we were having to deal with the growing pains, and then we were changing socially, of course, battling the issue of slavery and whether it was right or wrong, and should we have it, should we not, and all of that kind of stuff. And I just find that period fascinating. And of course, this is also the time period where Abraham Lincoln really comes into his own as a politician, and that is awesome. He's my favorite guy to read about. So that to me is awesome. Question number 4. Do you have a favorite nonfiction book? That question is so not fair. That has been on a couple different tags. That question's not fair. I don't like it. Well, it's not that I don't like it. It's just really hard to answer, because I got a lot of books that I really love that I try to share with others all the time. Some of those, I'm not going to do one. I have to do a couple, because it's impossible to do just one. I really love the author H.W. Brands, and he's got a book, Ben Franklin, that was really good, that I felt was really, really good. It's a big old door stopper, but it just, his writing style, he's a very good storyteller, and if you ever watch his lectures, he's really good at telling stories and bringing the reader or the listener along with him through the story. He's written some other really good biographies also. He's got one on Andrew Jackson. He's got one on Teddy Roosevelt. He's got some other ones. Those have been some of my favorites, but those would have to rank up there. I love Ron Chernow's biographies on Hamilton and Washington. I thought those were just great. I like James McPherson's Battle Cry of Freedom. I've mentioned that on the channel before. One of my favorite books. And then one that I can't remember if I've mentioned it or not, Joshua Schenck, I think is his name. He wrote a book, Lincoln's Melancholy. And it talks all about Abraham Lincoln and how he battled depression throughout his life and how that made him a great president. And I thought that book was fabulous. I really, really enjoyed it. It won some awards. I would recommend that to people to read. So question number 5, what do you think keeps people from wanting to read more nonfiction? I honestly think they had... and I share this opinion with several others that I've seen do this book tag, that they had a bad experience early on. Teachers didn't maybe, and I hate to blame my profession, but maybe they didn't present it well. And maybe it was a forced reading and kids just feel forced. And then throughout life, they just don't like it. And I find that to be sad, because we as teachers need to make sure that we're presenting nonfiction in a fun, lively way. And I really think that, what I've been doing in the classroom with the document-based questions, the DBQs, that really brings history to life. And I think my kids in my classroom are finding a much bigger appreciation for nonfiction, and they're enjoying it, and they're finding out that real life is actually just as exciting as a fiction book. Maybe you can't do some of the, like fantasy books, some of that stuff, but pretty much every other genre, you find those scenarios in real life. And so you really got to get that across to kids so that nonfiction becomes exciting to them. Because there are some lives of people, like biographies and stuff, that you'd be blown away what they went through in their life. You would think it's fiction sometimes. So we really need to get that across to the kids so that as adults they'll enjoy it. Why do you like nonfiction? Basically for the reasons that I just said. I find people's actual lives to be very, very exciting. I think history is exciting. I like the thought that I am a part of it. As we sit here and we go through this journey of life, my life has become history, and I've become a part of history. And it's just really exciting to think of it in that light. I teach social studies, and I've always loved history and social studies. I've always loved the subject ever since I was, even in middle school. I loved it. I don't know why, but I do. And that is just carried on with me, and so that's why I like reading it. I started off with biographies. I loved biographies. I kind of ate those up when I was a kid, and I've carried that love through. But now I like the general histories. I like the specific histories of, like I shared in the other video, like of certain battles and certain people and certain events. I just love those. So anyway, moving forward here, question number 7, what's a nonfiction book you read because of Booktube? One of the most recent ones that I've read, and I did a book review on this, was Crown of Blood, and it's a story of Lady Jane Grey. And that book I saw on a book haul by Lil's Vintage World out on her Booktube channel. And I saw that, and she talked that book up a little bit, and she had actually several others on Queens of England and other leading female figures of England. And I thought those looked really interesting, and so when I saw it in the bookstore, I snatched it up just like that, because I remembered Lil's Vintage World talking about that book, and so I read it, and it was really good. And then, along those same lines, I had done a bookshelf tour, and one of my books was a book by Stephen Puleo, and I believe it was Peg, who sent me a message saying, hey, you ought to try The Caning. I think it was Peg. I hope it was Peg. Hope I'm not wrong on that. But she had recommended I need to try that book. And so, lo and behold, I was watching Todd's Bursting Bookshelf, and he was pulling some books out from his bookshelf, and guess what he had? The Caning. And so that's another one. I haven't read it yet, but I am going to buy it. I'm on the lookout for it. It's kind of I would think more of a specialty book, so I'm probably going to have to buy that one off of Amazon. But that's another one that I've found because of Booktube, because I would have probably not seen that, at least not for a while. And that would go along with our antebellum time period, by the way. That'd go right in my wheelhouse. Question number 8, what's the best nonfiction book you've read lately? Oh my goodness. Hands down, The Glass Castle by Jeanette Walls. It's a memoir of her life, and holy moly, I'm telling you, people who do not like nonfiction, read this book, The Glass Castle, because she went through so much stuff in her life, you will think it's a fiction book, and it's extremely well written. I gave it a review of a 5. I thought it was just fabulous. And some of it was I made a connection with my own childhood. I had a lot of stuff happen to me when I was a kid, stuff that we went through with and poverty and being taken out of the home by social services and stuff like that. And so I went through some of the stuff that she talks about in her book with the poverty and the fear of social services. So I made kind of a connection with that book, but it is a really good book. Question number 9, what are some of your nonfiction reading goals? My nonfiction reading goals right at the moment are to finish my 2020 reading goals. I had 12 books on there. I was thinking 1 book a month, and I want to finish that list. I hate setting goals and not finishing the list. So that is my number 1 goal. And then I also wanted to get that Abraham Lincoln series by Sidney Blumenthal. I want to get those first 3 read, and those are my goals. So, question 10. What's your advice for incorporating more nonfiction into your reading diet? My advice would be to find some of the authors that are journalists. And I was watching Andrew B's channel, and he was talking about the biographies on LBJ, and he was talking about how that history, you have to take that with a grain of salt because it's done by a journalist and maybe not from the perspective of a historian. And I totally understand what he was talking about. I get that. But there is something to what the journalists are now doing for history. They're making it popular again so that people will read it. Because, histories, sometimes they get a little dry because history teachers sometimes don't write in the most popular style. I don't know if that's the right way of putting it. But I don't think it's a bad thing for journalists to tackle it either. As long as they're sticking to the facts and stuff, it's not bad, because they're making it readable and accessible to the average, the average reader, which if that person chooses to, they can then go into the technical histories. So I personally, I understand the argument Andrew made on his channel, and I agree with it. But by the same token, I think there is a place for the histories that these journalists have been putting together. I think it's good for our reading public. I think it's good for the people who are not nonfiction readers, because it's bringing them into the fold, so to speak. And so I actually think that's a really good way to get people to read more. And then the last one on here, a bonus. Give some recommendations of nonfiction booktube channels that you love. Okay, so these are the ones that I watch like all the time, regularly. I got lots of them that I'm following, that I catch their videos, but these are the 6 that I watch probably the most. In the evening time, I'll help my wife out with the dishes, and as I'm washing the dishes, yeah, because we're old school, here's the dishwasher right here. So as the dishwasher is working, I'll put my phone up in the window and I'll turn on these videos, and these are the ones that I listen to the most regularly. I listen to Peg over at the History Shelf. I love her content. She does a great job. I love her banter back and forth with Martine. I think it's fun to listen to, and she's got a great insight on books. I listen to Richardson's Reads, Mark Richardson. He's from up in the New England area. I think it's Vermont, I think is where he's from. And I like his stuff. He's a librarian. He brings a good perspective on books. I listen to Steve Donahue, who's read, seems like, every book known to man. He's always got an opinion on stuff. Very entertaining. Sean D. Standfast is one that I've picked up here, probably one of my more recent ones, and he's got a great perspective on stuff. Todd's Bursting Bookshelf, who kind of went on and kind of had a layoff in his videos, and recently he's been starting to put videos back out, and I'm very glad, because I thoroughly enjoy his stuff. He's got a great book collection, and his part of his collection on American history looks a lot like my collection, and he's been a lot of fun to listen to. And then Johnny Keene, he always gives a good perspective on things. He's got of course, his library in the lower level, and I always like listening to stuff he picks up. He's got a wide array of a wide range of books that he reads, and he just gives little simple lessons on life, and I've enjoyed his. Those are probably the 6 that I listen to the most. Like I said, there are several other channels that I follow, but I try to catch all of these guys' and gals' videos. So anyway, that is my take on the nonfiction on Booktube Tag. Thank you for Keely for doing this video, and as I said, I saw her version of this, and she had kind of gave me a little shout out for being a nonfiction person, and I appreciate that. Thank you for that. And anyway, this has been Bill Ruttenberg with the Ruttenberg Library, and I hope you enjoyed this book tag. I'll put the links down below in the description for those for the original video, and then for Keely's video. If you like the video, please feel free to hit the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Share this with others, and as always, Booktube, happy reading.